Okay, so anyway, we're gonna do a train story. That sounds good to you, Josh?
Yep.
Okay. So we're gonna do a train story, and well, actually, not a train story, railroad track story. So one Saturday morning, I come out of my house just to, you know, come out, and the kids outside were telling me that there was a story of there was some kid tied to the railroad tracks because his parents didn't want him anymore, and I decided that I kept asking them if they were telling me the truth, and they said they was. So I went and got a little peeling knife, and I rode my bike all the way down the train tracks where they said he might be, and I went down there to see if he was really there. And lo and behold, he was there. And he was tied so tight that I actually would have to cut into his skin to cut the ropes off of him. You couldn't cut between his skin and the track because they had his arms pinned up underneath the track. There was no space in between him and the track. And on the outside of the space, and you couldn't cut outside the track because they didn't tie it outside the track. They tied it underneath to the wood under the ground. And so I tried to get the knife under the ground, but the knife wouldn't cut going into the ground. It wouldn't do that. So then I couldn't cut him off. So then I saw a little tiny light at the edge. So I thought, oh my gosh, train is coming. So I got on my bike, I left the knife there, I got on my bike and I rode to get that train to stop. I made it to the train. Of course, they didn't really want to believe me to stop, but I did get them to stop finally, just in time. I mean, within like inches. Literally, I didn't think they were going to stop in time. I actually closed my eyes because I thought they're not going to make it. I killed this kid. But then I didn't, they did stop in time. So I made it. But then he called for rescue. I guess back in the 80s, the train people had a way of calling for help. They had a radio on the train station, the train track engine thing. They had a little CB thing. But anyway, he called for help, and we got the rescue people out there for the little boy. And they did have to cut his skin, but they didn't hurt him. They numbed his skin before they cut the rope. But so they didn't hurt him. But he did have to have stitches. And then there was the police interrogation after this. You know, it was like they wanted to know how I knew and why was I there and how did I know and who was this little boy. And of course, that was genuine questions. But the thing was, honestly, I didn't really know the kids that had told me he was down there. I had never seen those kids before. And so we went back, but this was like a couple hours later, but we went back, but those kids were gone, and they weren't neighborhood kids, so I don't know what they were doing there that day. And it was this coincidence that I came out when they were standing there. And so they weren't there. So I didn't know who the little boy was, and I didn't know where he went, and I didn't know where he belonged, and I didn't know who he was. I just figured he must be somehow a neighborhood kid. He must be, but I didn't know because he was, in my neighborhood on the track, so I didn't know where he was from. So I told him, I just kept saying, I don't know. Of course, the kid, he was a nice little boy. We don't know if he was an immigrant or not. We don't know if he was a citizen or if he was an immigrant from Mexico. We don't know. And the kid didn't talk. He couldn't give him his name. He didn't give any information about himself. I don't even know if he talked. They tried to talk to him in Spanish, but he didn't answer him in Spanish or English. So I don't think the kid talked at all. He was only 3 or 4. So, but you'd think a 3 or 4-year-old would talk, but maybe he was too scared. We're not sure. But he didn't talk, and I didn't know. And then of course my mom comes out. And she wanted to know what I'd done now, and I hadn't done anything really wrong, but it didn't matter. She was mad because I'd had cops out there and firefighters and rescue people, and so it must have been something I'd done this bad. And with my mom, I didn't get a trial. You didn't get an explanation or any of that kind of thing. Back in the 80s, we didn't get that stuff. We got just there was police officers out there, there was firefighters out there, they were talking to me, therefore I was the one that did it. So therefore I was bad. So I got in trouble and got grounded and for 3 weeks for that. And then the cops were mad at me too because I didn't have any information. So I got in trouble from them too. And then again, I got in trouble because I lost the steak knife. The police took the steak knife with them, so I got in trouble for that too. That was more grounding. That was an extra whole week. But then they used that particular steak knife to cut him off the track. So, you know, so I don't know, but you know, still, I guess it was worth it. You know, in St. Josh, it was worth it. But still, I don't know. It just seemed like I did save the little boy's life, and he did grow up, and he did go on with his life, but at the same time, I ended up with a month's groundation too. And to be honest with you, I never did see those kids ever again in my entire life, so I don't know who they were. So that's the end of the story. Sounds good?
Yeah.
Okay.